Nashville, Tennessee, country music capital of the world, home of the Grand Ole Opry, where singers and dreamers come seeking stardom. Join me as we learn about the lives and careers of those who built this town on Classic Country Backstories. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Classic Country Backstories. I'm Colleen Gallagher. We're going to talk about George Jones today. He had 13 number one hits on the Billboard Country charts, 143 top 40 songs. He was a member of the Country Music Hall of Fame with numerous CMA, ACM, and Grammy Awards. Millions of people knew how iconic of a country legend that George Jones actually was, but few knew about the woman behind the man, a strong-willed woman who eventually helped to save George's life, his career, and eventually his soul. Please welcome to the show, Miss Nancy Jones.
Oh, thank you so much. That was great.
Well, how are you doing today, Nancy?
I'm doing great. It's really cold here. I'm sure it is where you are too. But
Oh yeah, we've had a nice storm up here in Missouri, so
oh,
we were
good gosh.
hoping. Yeah, this has been our third attempt to try to get with you, and I was afraid last night our power was going to go off. So, but it didn't. We have it, so the Lord's on our side today.
That's great. He's always on our side.
That's right. That's right. Well, I read your book, Playin, Possum: My Memories of George Jones, and my understanding, it just released. When did the book actually
September
release?
the 12th on his birthday.
On his birthday.
Uh-huh.
Isn't that awesome? Well, I read the book. It's an amazing book. I had several tears during the book. I had several laughs during the book. I tell you, he was something else, wasn't he?
Yeah, they only made one. That was it. God said, "Oh my gosh, I cannot put another one here."
You all had a great life, but you had lots of ups and downs, didn't you?
Yeah, we were married 30 years together, 32 years, and it's everybody has their ups and their downs and all of that, but I stayed in there and fought with it and got rid of those demons that just did not want to go anywhere. But once you read the book, you'll see how hard it was to get rid of those demons.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know you all had been through so much. So how difficult was this book for you to write?
What?
How difficult was this book for you to write?
It was very difficult. I cried, I laughed, mostly a lot of tears. I mean, it brings back a lot of memories of things, I guess, some that I had forgot about too, but I think God wanted me to write this book when I had got COVID and died. And I just told the truth. That's all it is. I mean, I just came out with the truth. I felt what needed to come out of my heart. And I know that George would have wanted me to do this. And that's why that I wrote the book. And I'm not going to say it was easy. There was nothing easy about it. But I stayed in there and I did it. And I'm proud of the book. And the book is also, if you're not a believer in Jesus Christ, you will when you get through reading this book.
I would definitely agree with that. Well, you've been through so much since George passed in 2013. I didn't realize that you almost died from COVID in 2021. Will you talk to us just about that for just a minute and let us know how you're doing now?
I'm doing fine now. God's still there with me, bringing me through a lot. I lost all my hair and I did die. And also I had to learn how to walk again. And I got down to 90 something pounds, and my right lung, 70% of that, there was a fungus in there, and it just took them forever to find that fungus. But they did find out what was eating the holes in my lungs. But God is so good that I'm not on oxygen. I mean, I can fly and go and do what I want. And they told me, well, when you fly and go somewhere, you're going to have your little oxygen tank. And I'm like, nah, Jesus don't want me doing that. And I don't have to have it.
That is fabulous. Well, Kirk West is a man who helps to manage.
Oh my gosh, if it hadn't been for Kirk, I would not be here today, because he was there the whole time during the whole thing. And it's so weird. It was during COVID, and when he took me to the doctor, they had to work on me first in the car. And so they would, because you couldn't go in. So they would come
Mhm.
out and give me all kinds of glucose, give me stuff out in the car to make me well, to feel better. And I told him, I said, I'm dying out here. And he was like, no, no, everything's going to be fine. We're going to do this and that. I said, Kirk, listen to me. I'm dying in this back seat. You need to call them and tell them. I know I have a whole different feeling. It's not, I'm dying. It's just plain and simple. I'm dying. And
Wow.
I did. So it was the most unbearable thing I think I've ever went through. And with Kirk there with me, as he picked me up and ran and up to the upstairs to where the doctor was that was calling the shots on the nurse bringing everything out, he was screaming at him that she doesn't have a pulse. And that doctor said, well, she's gone. He said, no, she's not. No, she's not. Do something. Well, this nurse come running down the hall, he said, and she called 911. So by the time 911 got there, I was gone. So they come
Oh,
up and they said, uh, she didn't have a pulse. He said, get her to the hospital, which was across the street. And so they got me there. I mean, when they started taking me out, I got in the elevator and Kirk said I started screaming, no, no. I did not want to go to the hospital because Joe Diffie had died of COVID and
oh
my
yeah.
best friend. And I'm like, if I go to that hospital, they're going to kill me. And the doctor was just, they were just so rude there. It was like, okay, you've got COVID and you've already died once. And either we put you on the ventilator or whatever. And I said, I'm not going on the ventilator. Kirk fought them so hard not to put me on that ventilator. He told him, I'll sue this hospital if you do. And I stayed in the hospital until they finally let him in to come in. They didn't feed me. They didn't do anything, honey.
Oh
Nothing.
boy.
Because to them, I was already a dead person. So that's why I got down to 90 pounds, couldn't walk, barely talk. I could not turn over. If I would turn over, it had to have somebody to turn me over and then bring me back. It was, I lost all the muscles in my legs and everything. But I'm here. God's with me every single day. And if I could and I had a church, girl, I would be preaching and saying, there is a God. You people better get on your knees because I, in my heart, honestly believe he is coming back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I definitely wanted to mention Kirk because I know he was such an instrumental point in saving your life, and that he cared for you both physically and spiritually. So I just had to bring him
Oh,
up, and I want to give him a personal shout out just because he's worked hard with me to try to get things set up with you. I really appreciate
oh,
that.
he had that gospel music going at Lauren Daigle. He had her music blaring in my room. And
Oh,
I
that's
just
awesome.
never in my life had anyone that took care of me like Kurt did. I mean,
That's
I was in
amazing.
diapers. I mean, I had no control of anything. And
Yes.
that man stayed right there and fought the doctors and the nurses. And he was like, I've got her. Y'all just go do what you got to do. I'm taking care of her. And, I got to, out of that, I did get neuropathy of the feet. So I can't
Mhm.
drive anymore. So I depend on him to take me everywhere. And not one time has he ever said, no, I'm too tired or I'm not going to do it. He has never denied me. If I want to go shopping or whatever, he's always carrying me where I need to go.
No, he's been a huge blessing in your life, hasn't he?
Yes.
That's great. That's great. So let's talk about George Jones. When you met George in November of 1981, he stopped loving her today on the top of the charts, along with If Drinking Don't Kill Me and Still Doing Time. However, you really didn't know who he was, did you?
No, no, no. We got together November of 81. That's true. But I had no idea who George Jones was. I was into Creedence Clearwater. I mean, you put that on and I could clean a house in 15 minutes. But I did not know country music. But when I heard this man sing, I'm like, wow, how is that coming out of that mouth? And it just, I was blown away the first time I ever heard him sing.
Well, now I know you've probably been asked this a million times, but can you give us the story of how you met him?
Well, it was a girlfriend of mine, which is in the book, and the book explains just about everything. But she was a friend of mine, and she was dating his manager, and she called me and said, "Go with me to New York." I said, "I ain't going to New York. I didn't lose nothing there." She kept on, and I said, "Okay, I will go. I do not know who he is. I don't know nothing about country music. Now, if you're going to go see Creedence Clearwater, girl, I'm on my way." But I did go, and he was just precious. I mean, we stayed up and talked all night long, and he unloaded things that he told me he had never told anyone. And it was just that closeness. So when I was ready for me to fly home, I did commercial, and Lord and behold, he chartered a plane and he beat me home. I mean, I've been
Wow.
all day long in the airport, exhausted, trying to get home. And I get there, and there's this strange car. He done got there and rented a car and everything. I'm like, who in the world is at my house? That was George. I said, well, you could have let me come on the charter plane with you because I am exhausted. He came in, stayed there a week. We had a blast. He can cook very good too.
Isn't that something? You wouldn't think about George Jones being able to cook.
He could though. He was good.
That's great. That's
Well, he
great.
liked that southern cooking. You know, you had
Oh
to
yeah.
have the pinto beans and the purple whole peas and the turnip greens and the cornbread. He knew how to cook all that.
All that good stuff. That's
Uh
right.
huh.
So, so what was it that actually made you fall in love with George?
I think when he poured out his heart to me and told me things that he said that he's never told anyone, and I could see the wicked people around him.
Yeah.
And I've never seen anything like it in my life, Colleen. I never realized that God would put those kind of people on this earth. And like I
Yeah.
said, it's in the book. You can read it. You can see what I went through. And I've never seen nothing like it. They hated me. They wanted me dead. And believe me, they tried.
Well, it's never been a secret that George Jones struggled with a severe alcohol and drug addiction. However, it was really much worse than what most people knew and what you both were going through and your families during that time. You have to be a really, really strong woman to go through what you went through with
Well, a
him.
lot of that I protected because I didn't feel like his fans need to know how really bad he really was.
Right.
But I protected him from a lot of stuff. And I just felt like I had to be a fighter. I think I
Sure.
had in the book, you'll see, I was not raised up as my mom was not a loving person. I think God started me at a very young age, preparing me for this. And I explained that in the book and the cruelty I went through. And I think that he prepared me for this, and he put a lot of Jesus in me, and let's go, girl, go get him.
Well, how long did it take you to realize how bad George was struggling once you got with him?
Well, I never ever, I didn't even know what marijuana looked like. I definitely didn't know what cocaine looked like. And
Mhm.
I think that he thought that I was making fun of him when I did see what is he putting up his nose? This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen.
Mhm.
And I said to him, I don't understand what you're doing. It doesn't make sense to me. Well, at that time, he was so high that he just wham knocked the fire out of me. And
Mhm.
I'm like, you know what, buddy? I'm fixing to get you off that mess. This is ridiculous. This is not
Yeah.
the George Jones I know. This is a very evil person that just slapped me across my face. And that I think that's when I started realizing that I had to fight to get those demons out. I've never seen demons like this.
Yeah. Well, I know you've talked about him having demons, and I did read in the book said you that you were engaged in a spiritual battle. So you felt like the devil had a big hold on him at that point, didn't you?
Oh, I know he did. I know he did.
Yeah.
And the devil would get so mad because he couldn't put a hold on me. I mean, he did everything. Those people that tried to kill me and all of this, they did everything to run me off. And I knew that if I did, they would kill him.
Yeah. Well, and it seemed like George truly wanted to be free of addiction at times in his life. He even went to rehab at times. It seemed like he wanted out from under it.
He did want help, but as
Yeah.
soon as he would get out, here they all come again. Every one of those
Sure.
mean, hateful people, like in his ear, in his ear, in his ear, and get away from her because da da da. They just it was weird. I've never seen anything like it. But he did want to get better, but he couldn't whenever they were all pulling on him and
Mhm.
and giving the cocaine. Here, take this, take that. You'd do a better show if you had this. So that was the fight that I had. Even when we would lease buses, I'd never seen anything like it. The guy that we was leasing the bus from, I soon learned that he would go on before we did and make sure the bus was clean, ready to go, and he'd put cocaine in the medicine cabinet.
Oh boy.
So I would go in and throw it in
Hmm.
the commode, flush it out, gone. And I got in a lot of trouble with that. But you know what? I didn't care. It was easier to flush it down the commode than to know the journey we were fixing to take on that bus.
Sure. Well, it seemed at times that George's life would end through alcohol and drugs. How in the world did you hold on as long as you did? Because it was not a short period of time.
Oh, Lord, no. I would have never held on without the good Lord, honey. That was
Yeah.
the man that kept saying, go back in there, fight for this guy. He's going to die. And I did. And I did. In the book, you will hear and see, I sent two of the guys to prison. And yes, I feared for my life a long time while they got out of prison. And one, as soon as he got out, he died like, I think 2 weeks after that. The other one is still alive. But you don't think I didn't worry about that? Every car that was behind me or everywhere I was always looking to see if those two people were not nowhere near me.
Hmm. Well, now I know you also had, and George had support uh, from both Johnny Cash and Waylon Jennings. They were a great support to you and to George, weren't they?
Let me tell you, I loved Waylon Jennings. I loved Johnny Cash. I loved June Carter. They would come to me and say, don't give up. Don't give up. Especially when Johnny got so spiritual himself and June. They were like, God is with you. We pray every night for you. And Waylon, he was totally different. He was a funny guy. I just loved him. He'd come to the house and I'd be like, you're going to go to hell if you don't quit doing drugs and you don't quit doing this. And he told George one day, he said, can you put a muscle on her mouth? I'm like, you ain't gonna put no muscle on me. I ain't gonna shut up.
Well, now, something too, I don't think a lot of people know how instrumental that you were in helping George to rebuild his career out there helping him. I know at times he was in financial straits. I know that, um, which we do a biography, which will be put on the beginning of this interview. And I know that he had a tough time. There were a lot, the no show thing went on. I also know there were times that he was accused of being no show when he wasn't.
Well,
But
he had a lot of no shows, and
yeah,
I used to feel sorry for the postman. I don't know how he was getting those things in the mailbox. So I just said one day to the lawyer, he was charging so much money. We had no money. We had
yeah,
nothing. I said, I'm doing these myself. He said, you can't, you're going to get this and you're going to lose this. I said, what are we going to lose? We don't have nothing.
Yeah.
So I got
Yeah.
on the phone. I called every promoter there was on those no shows. And they're like, no, he won't show up. I said, yes, he will. I promise you, I will make him show up. So I started working on those. Like I would do, I would say, what day you want? You want a Friday? You want a Saturday? You want a Thursday? Well, naturally they're going to take a Saturday. So
Mhm.
then I had to make sure that we were booked on a Thursday and a Sunday so that we would have enough money to run the buses and pay the
Mhm.
band because I would give Saturday away.
Mhm.
So I worked so hard on that. Um, it was 150 no shows,
150 no-shows.
and I got them
Wow.
all gone.
Isn't that something?
I got a sty in my eye in case you're trying to figure out what I'm doing over here.
No,
It
it's all
is
right.
killing me.
So, you all had several lawsuits pending. You all worked through all of that. Um, and then you took care of George's merch at his shows too, didn't you?
I did. I mean, that was so fun. You know what? I just love people, and I would say I'm going to go out and sell concessions. Now, honey, what do you think people are going to think? I said I don't care. I want to go. So I would go out, and my son-in-law was working for us too. I would go out and sell concessions, and shoot, everybody would come up and want an autograph, want to take a picture with me, and I'm like, this is fun, man. And so that we sold a lot of concessions. Well, then whenever I didn't feel good, my son-in-law, his name was Kirk, he'd come over to, Mom, you got to come help us, man. We're not doing good. Like, oh shoot. I said, I will, because the next night was a casino. If you give me $500 to play the slots, we'll give them to you. Come on. I'd go out there and I would sell and have a blast, girl. I just love people. I mean, and little kids. And what I would do is they would laugh at me so much, Colleen, because anybody in the service, policemen, servicemen, they would come up and I didn't say right then, I'll give you that. You can get whatever you want. I'd wait till they got what they wanted and I gave it to them. Well, Bobby Burkhead went on the bus one day and he said, George, I hope to heck we never play Fort Polk or anything like that because Nancy gives away everything. He said, that's Nancy. She ain't going to stop. Oh, I have to tell you a good one I did. It's in the book. We were in
Sure.
Canada and I looked out there and we stayed on the bus and I pulled the curtain back and there was like 5 or 6 little old kids on out there. Honey, their heads were shaved. So I told George, look at those kids. I said, they all have cancer. Oh, honey, get them something. So I'd go lift up the big old bay door. It was so heavy. I'd go in there and get a T-shirt and a cap. And George would sign an autograph picture. Then I'd get a CD. So I was out there giving them out. When Bobby Burkhead came on, he said, what are you doing? I said, those kids have cancer. He said, they do not. They have head lice and they've been shaved. I didn't care. I said, I don't care. I still gave them something. But
That's fabulous.
that was
Fabulous.
so funny. George was laughing so hard. He said,
That's great.
that's my wife.
Oh my gosh. Well, now you were also pretty instrumental in bringing George and Tammy back together to record
I
and
did.
tour one.
I get so tickled at some of these things. I don't do Facebook, but every now and then I'll do. You'll see something that'll come up, and it'll say George still loves Tammy. They're up there together. Blah blah blah. They do not know the heck I had to go through to get them to even be friends. And then, oh yeah, that wasn't it. I had to go and talk them into doing a tour together. So I did nickname the tour from hell because they did. I mean, I've never seen people that despised each other as much as they did. But then they'd get on the stage and you'd think, well, they're just in love with each other, singing those love songs and all that. Then after the show, he'd be mad, she'd be mad. I'm like, I'll be so glad when this tour's over with. But no, I love Tammy. I did. I had fun with her. And but we would never talk about George. I'd go over and visit her,
Yeah.
and George's like, "You gonna learn? She's a snake in the grass." Oh, stop it. But I did get along with Tammy. He did not. No.
Yeah. Well, I think too, after you've been married to somebody and everything they went through together, I could see where they would it would be kind of tough,
Well,
but
there
it's
was,
great though that they were able to get back together to make the music
yeah, right.
and and the record and the tour and all that. It's just fabulous. I worked with Tammy one time up here close to St. Louis. I opened for her. Uh, Probably 3 or 4 years before she passed. She put on a heck of a show, and she was very, very gracious to me. It was really nice to meet her, and I remember I had problems with my bass guitar. Had a tuning peg that was broken, and I had to I hit the first couple songs and made it through those, and then I started having problems with my guitar. We did 2 shows, so I kind of fumbled through the first show, and after it was done we kind of rigged it again, and then we were in probably the first or second song of the second show, and it went bad again, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm just so I was basically playing on 3 strings instead of 4, and I look over and there's Tammy sitting on a chair on the side of the stage, and George was behind her. I was a nervous wreck, but we made it through the show. And I talked to her, afterwards. I said, "You probably saw the worst performance you could ever see out of me." And she said, "Well, why didn't you say something?" She said, "I bet our bass player would have given you a bass in a second to use." But I thought it's Tammy Wynette. I didn't want to ask her guys for anything,
Oh, she wouldn't
but
have cared. She's that sweet.
well, it was great to get to work with her, and I wish I had gotten to meet George. I never did. I've heard great stories through Max T. Barnes. He thinks the world of George and you. So but I think it's fabulous. But now, so the public remembers that George and Tammy were married, and
Yeah, for
mostly
six
that was
years, you'd think it was
exactly.
60 the way they carry on.
That's what I was going to ask you because I said they were really only married 6 years, and you all were married for what, 30?
30 years together, 32 years.
Wow. So, and you and George, you lived on a farm outside of Franklin. I know that. Um, could you talk about George a little bit when things were going well and he was sober? What was he like at home? What did he like to do?
He was funny. He was a very funny person, but all those years, all he ever did was drink and drugs. So it was kind of hard to get him back. Let's go do this, let's go do that. Or it was hard to get him to do anything. Now, he loved to ride around on the farm. We had over 100 acres and listen to music
Yeah.
only in his car, never in the house. It didn't make sense to me, but not in the house. He'd always stick in a cassette and ride around, listen to that, or come back and say, "You got to come hear this song." Okay, okay, okay. And that was George. It was every now and then we had 2 big old ponds out there, and he'd go out there when little Jimmy Dickens was out there and throw a wet line in there with Jimmy and talk, and that was. And then Cactus came over a lot. He just lived right down there. That's married to Winona, and he would visit with them, and that's how he enjoyed life and riding around on the golf cart. And my kids lived, and his oldest daughter, Susan, which is my best friend to this day, I had her out there. She had a house out there. My 2 daughters had a house out there. So all the grandkids was out there. So he enjoyed the grandkids going and picking them up and riding them all over the place on the golf cart. So that was George's life.
That's great. That's great, though. I mean, he seemed like he was very happy.
He
Um,
was.
I I also read his autobiography. I lived to tell it all. And I was really shocked at how forthcoming he was about things he'd been through and the things he'd done. And most people had thought at one point he'd pretty well stopped drinking, but he was still fighting the demons at that point,
Right.
I believe. And then everybody has a breaking point. And yours came in March of 1999, I think. Most of the general public thought he'd quit drinking, but he was still going.
Well,
And I know
George thought if vodka was not drinking, those little bottles. I'm like,
yeah,
that's liquor, George. That's liquor.
yeah,
He'd hide
yeah.
them suckers everywhere in his boot and his coat pocket, and I never in my life go through a closet and clean out like I would do every time. And so, yes, he thought that was not drinking because it wasn't whiskey, and
Mhm.
he thought you couldn't smell it. I'm like, you can smell vodka, George, but he it was easier to get him off the vodka than it was to get him off the hard whiskey.
Oh, yeah, and the cocaine, I'm sure. But well, then, I mean, he was working at that point. He was working on Cold Hard Truth, I believe, and I think you pretty well had enough at that point, and we're thinking about leaving at that point. Is that
Right.
true? And you told him that. So, but then George had something to stopped him in his tracks at that point, didn't he? He had an accident. Can you tell us a little bit about that one?
Well, I just think that George, he had a rough childhood. Then he got in with all this mess,
Mhm.
and then he got married to very young and divorced.
Yeah.
Then he married Tammy, and like he
Mhm.
told me, I felt so in love with her singing. And
Mhm.
when that got old, I didn't know how to get out of there. So I thought, well, I'll just get drunk, and sooner or later, she'll kick me out, and I don't have to go back. So that's how he was with his marriages. And
Right.
then with ours, it was totally different. I mean, it was, I never ever said, hey, I can't take it anymore, because if I did, I knew then it would take him backwards instead of forward. So I
Right.
just learned a lot. I mean, I really did learn a lot, and I would love to help people that have a son or a husband that's on an alcoholic, and they want to give up and don't know how to help them. I would love to help them.
Well, now, but and after George had his accident, I mean, his life was transformed at that point, was he not? At
Yes,
that, it was at that point he realized how precious his life was, apparently, and uh, and so he totally turned around at that point. Um, I know he almost died. Did he not die in the helicopter going to the hospital?
yeah. When he had the wreck at the bridge,
Yes,
yes.
yes,
And
yeah.
that's really what got it. That's whenever the Holy Spirit got him. Then it wasn't
Mhm.
the demons. That's when they got him in that hospital. And when he came to after being in that coma and stuff, all I could hear was gospel music. He was singing at the top of his voice, and I knew then that God done got in there and entered that man and got him clean.
So you managed to have several years with him clean and sober, didn't you?
I did, from 99
That
to 2013.
that is just
Yes.
amazing. So the thing that amazes me most about his recovery from his injuries, including the vocal cord problems he had after he had the tracheotomy, with the Lord's help, he worked his way through recovery with you and returned to the stage to perform. And he performed for several years up until right before his
Right,
passing.
right.
Um, he did the song Choices, which has always been one of my favorite George Jones tunes. It was written by Mike Curtis and Billy Yates. Billy Yates also wrote I Don't Need Your Rocking Chair and Honky Tonk Song for him. Um, but
I
at
love
first,
Billy Yates.
oh, I do too. Actually, Billy Yates, I know Billy's the one that hooked me up with you to begin with. We did a show with him. He's a Missouri boy, and we worked up here with him. He's a great guy, and a great songwriter.
Yes.
Uh, but at first, George didn't really think Choices was for him, did he?
No, no, he didn't. And then I kept telling Billy, bring it back, bring it back. Give him a week and bring it back. He'd bring it back out there. Hey, George, listen to this song. Then finally one day he said, well, son, why hadn't you given me that song? I'm like, are you crazy? But he loved I Don't Need Your Rocking Chair.
Oh my gosh, it was such a great song. And the videos that go with all these songs were just fabulous too.
Right.
Had great videos. So yeah, I have to give a big shout out to Billy Yates for helping us hook up with you for the interview. He's such a great guy. Hope we get to work with him again soon. But we really appreciate him, on that too. So George's health started failing in 2012, pretty much. He'd had several visits to the hospital that year and in 2013. George knew that his life was coming to an end,
Oh
didn't he?
yeah, he knew.
And he tried to kind of prepare you for that.
Yeah,
That's what I mean, I just feel like he knew it was
he
coming, but he
definitely
wanted to make
knew,
sure
and
you were okay.
he he was ready. He was
Yeah,
ready. I mean, he had
yeah,
accepted the Lord, and he was ready. And I don't think a day goes by that I don't think about him, but I also know he's in heaven.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, and I think it's so sweet. He wanted to make sure you're okay. He wanted to take care of you, and I think
He did.
that's
Yes.
big. That says an awful lot about how much he loved you. So, George is buried at Nashville's Woodlawn Cemetery. He chose his own resting place, did he not? How much it was 68 plots, I think he bought
Yeah.
in
You
that
want to know
section.
why? We was out there
Why
looking
was it?
one day, and I said, George, we do not need this many plots. He said, honey, I am not going to be crowded. Like, my God. Oh, yeah, that would be George.
There's no fear there, is there?
No, no.
Well, now we have been there. We visited there a couple different times, which I think is just beautiful out there.
Thank you.
But I've also seen where Johnny Paycheck's grave is next to him, um, in the family plot. And I know Johnny was part of the Jones Boys for about 4 years, from '62 to '66. But I think that is so sweet that he is there, that he is
That was
buried
a
close to
funny man, was Johnny Paycheck. Lord
him.
have mercy. Have him and George. He'd come and stay 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm like, oh my God, Johnny, you got to go home. I mean, he'd be just jumping and carrying on, and I'm like, and he could eat. Oh my God, the man loved to eat.
And
But
he was
I
a little
loved
bitty thing.
he was precious.
He wasn't very big. I did get to see him a few times, and I saw him when he was pretty heavy into his abuse as well. But
Then he got
I'm
little.
telling you, the automatic, whenever he was introduced on stage, how he could pull it off. I've never seen anything like it. He could sing, and he was still just fabulous.
Old
But
violin. He loved that song.
it's a beautiful song, and
Hmm.
it's really moving, his version. I also like his version with Daryl Singletary. They did
Oh
it
yeah.
together. I love that. Um, so on November 15th, 2024, you all released George Jones' The Lost Nashville Sessions,
Uh-huh.
right? Can you tell us a little bit about that project? How did that come to be?
Well, let me get it. Hold on. Ah, where is it? Come
You
here,
need a
you little
picture?
booger. I got it.
I was going to say, if you don't have a picture, I could put one up, but oh, there we go.
You got it?
Yes,
Okay, what
that's
this
stunning.
is that whenever you cut the radio spots years ago to say something about your album, and
Yes,
he would go in and cut the song at the radio station.
at
Well,
the
then
radio
they would play
station.
it, and then when they got through with it, they throwed it all away. So George, so um, oh gosh, I can't even think of his name right now. With the Oak Ridge Boys, his son found it and reproduced it, but didn't do anything any different than what George did. But what it was and makes it so unique is that the he didn't have to stop and redo it, and he just sung it straight out, just straight out. So when you listen to this album, you're hearing George Jones sing it straight out, not being mixed, not stopping, not doing nothing. They did
Wow.
bring it up to date to the music about what it is today, but it's George's voice on there.
Mhm.
And it's just absolutely amazing to hear him sing that song, all the songs on here, and not stop and having Billy Sherrill say, well, let's tweak this. And then you sit down, then you're
Right.
aggravated. All the way through.
Well, now I have listened to part of it, and I didn't realize that, because it is amazing
It
what I
is
have
amazing.
listened to. That there were no stops and there were no tweaks. I mean, it is fantastic.
and it
It's
was
it
just him in the studio,
well,
in the radio station.
that is amazing. Well, I everybody needs to go out and buy this project because
Go to
I am telling
Walmart.
you, it, well, yeah, and I saw it on I think Amazon too.
Amazon's
So
got it. Yes.
yes, so make sure everybody go out and buy a copy of that. Buy some groceries for Nancy. That probably wouldn't hurt none either.
And my
So
book's on Amazon too.
and your book's on Amazon. I did get the book. I actually downloaded the Kindle version because I like to highlight mine whenever I get ready to do some interviews and things like that. But I'm telling you what, that book is one of the best books I've ever read. Ever read. It was very moving. There's so much information. There's so much in this book that we're not going to get to today. So people have got to go buy this book. If you are a country music fan at all, it is a fantastic read. Um, but I think it's important, especially for people that are such huge fans of George Jones, to see how he lived and actually how well, after his addiction, how he came out of that, and your relationship with him. Because I think, sometimes the alcoholism and the drug addiction overshadows what he truly was,
Right.
and he was such a, his gift, his musical gift was just unbelievable, so everybody's got to go out and they have to get your book, and they've got to get this set because it is amazing. And I will order it when I get off of here. So,
Oh,
so, but now George Jones, he charted somewhere in the area of 160 singles. He sold over 8 million records, and he won numerous awards and throughout his career. Did he ever have one thing that he was more proud of than anything else? Was there anything that he really stood out to him about his musical career?
I think the thing that George was proud of is that he never changed. He was country music, and he
Yeah,
loved country music. There's no
yeah.
way you could have ever changed him, and there's no way that he would have changed, even if it didn't say, George, if you sing this one rock and roll song, I promise you're going to make millions. You know what he would say? Nah, man, I like country music and I like ballads.
Well, that's what he did, and everybody loved him. Anybody that was a country music fan at all had to love George Jones because he was country music. That's all there is to it. So, but Nancy, I really really appreciate you taking some time, to talk to us today. It's been such an honor to sit down and talk with you. I know we've been working on this for a while. I'm so glad you're doing okay. Glad
Thank
you're doing
you.
well. Do you do any book signings? Do you get out and do anything like that
Well,
now?
yes, I have done a lot of book signs, and I'm gonna tell Billy Yates, why don't you bring me to Missouri so I can sell some books?
Oh my
I
gosh, that would be awesome.
tell him I'm gonna
You
sign every one of them, and he needs to bring me there.
Well, I'm gonna have to call him, and we're gonna have to talk about this one then. That would be great. So,
Okay.
well, Nancy Jones, thank you so much. Well, we appreciate you so much here on Classic Country Backstories, and we'll talk to you again. Okay?
Thank you so much, and thank your
Thank
husband for
you.
helping out today.
That's it, folks. For Classic Country Backstories, I'm Colleen Gallagher.